This video from the Doing Your Dissertation series considers how to write an effective research question. In the last video, we considered the process of identifying a topic to research. In this video, we consider the difference between a topic and research question and consider what makes for a strong research question. So what exactly do we mean by a research question, and how does that differ from your topic? The topic is essentially the subject of your research, which can be articulated very broadly as, for example, steganography, disability legislation, electric cars, or Coen Brothers films, or more specifically perhaps as the representation of women leaders in the media, or autonomy in the clinical guidelines for gender dysphoria, for example. On the other hand, research questions are just that, a specific question to which you can give an answer. So whereas we might have a topic of surrogacy arrangements in UK law, the associated research question might be, should surrogacy arrangements be enforceable in UK law? Or if your topic is drag culture in contemporary society, your research question might be, how has drag culture shifted from fringe identity to mainstream culture? So research questions must always be in the form of a question, but they must also be original, relevant, specific, and researchable. We've already seen similar kinds of criteria when choosing your topic, of course, because there is natural overlap between your topic and question. But let's look at some of these criteria again from the perspective of the research question. Your research question must be original. This doesn't mean that the topic has to be original, of course, but the question must be in some way. You may, of course, have a completely original question which has never been researched before. This is fine in principle, but remember that there still needs to be a body of academic literature for you to draw on to provide the context and rationale for your own question. Without this, the question may meet the criterion of originality, but fail the criterion of being researchable within the scope of a dissertation. Another possibility might be that an existing question has already been asked and answered using one type of data, but not with some other type of data, so your research question might be similar or identical to another piece of research, but using different data to shed light on the issue. Such data might be more recent than when the question was originally researched, for example. However, it's by far most common for research to build upon an existing issue in the literature by approaching it from a slightly different perspective or looking at a slightly different aspect of the topic in some way. So, for example, a question such as, is European Union law supreme over domestic law, has been researched a great deal, so it would not be an original question to ask. However, a question which examines the issue of how UK and EU law align in practice post-Brexit is more original, as well as arguably more relevant and specific to the current legal and political landscape. Your question also needs to be specific. We already considered specificity in terms of narrowing down your research topic, and the same principles apply to the question. For example, what's the relationship between degree attainment and employment outcomes is likely too broad to be answerable, but does obtaining a first-class honours degree increase the likelihood of a graduate being employed in the financial industry in the UK is much more specific and focused. Finally, just as when choosing a topic, your research question needs to be researchable. So is there academic literature available, access to the types of sources and data needed to answer the question, or would that data be possible to collect? For example, a question such as, does the presence of autistic traits influence performance on tasks that require sustained attention or divided attention, should be researchable as long as you have access to an appropriate number of people with and without autistic traits and have standardized tests that can be used to measure both ASD traits and attention tasks. So once you have a question, you can check whether it ticks all the boxes for a strong research question. Is it an original approach to an existing issue or an original question? Is it topical or debated? Is it subject or programme related? Is it clear and focused? Is it answerable within the word limit? And is there existing literature to provide the academic basis for the research? Do you have access to sources of data or the ability to collect such data? It's also worth noting that depending on your subject, you may need to express your research question as aims and specific hypotheses that will be tested. This is particularly common in STEM subjects, where an empirical experiment will be carried out. So in this example, the topic of study is the square root law of steganography, but the research is expressed as an aim to empirically validate the square root law of steganography by mimicking previous experiments using state-of-the-art embedding and detection algorithms, and the student developed specific hypotheses or predictions to test through her experiment. But these are all things that you'll be able to discuss and confirm with your supervisor, including whether you need to state your research in the form of a research question or one or more research aims and hypotheses. In summary, remember that you need a research question, not just a topic, or perhaps, depending on your subject, the research might be expressed through aims and hypotheses rather than a question. In any case, your research question or aim should be original, relevant, specific and researchable, and you can use these criteria to evaluate your own research question. You'll also be able to get advice on your research question from your supervisor.